Welcome to 100 Days and Beyond. I'm Dudley Peacock, and this is day 2. Yesterday, I introduced the two-phase model. The idea that every business transformation has a build phase and a beyond phase, and that the real return on investment happens in the second phase. Today, I want to zoom in on that first phase, the first 100 days, the build, because there is a myth out there, and I have contributed to it myself, that an ERP implementation takes about 100 days and follows a neat, predictable timeline. Requirements, configuration, testing, training, go live. Nice and clean. 13 weeks, give or take. Everyone shakes hands and moves on. That is not what actually happens. What actually happens is messier, harder, more emotional, and more valuable than any sales presentation will ever tell you. And if you are about to go through an implementation, or you are in the middle of one right now and wondering why it feels like chaos, I want you to hear the honest version. Let me walk you through it. Every implementation starts with discovery, requirements gathering, workshops, interviews, process mapping, and in the first 2 weeks, it feels like everything is moving quickly. You are in a room with your implementation partner, drawing workflow diagrams on whiteboards, listing all the things you need the system to do. The energy is high. Everyone is excited about the new system. The project plan looks achievable. Here is what nobody tells you. Discovery is the part of the project where you think you understand 90% of the requirements, but you have actually only uncovered about 60%. The remaining 40% is buried in institutional knowledge, in workarounds that your team has been doing for so long they have forgotten they are workarounds, in edge cases that only happen once a quarter, but are critical when they do. I implemented Sage X3 for a fencing manufacturer, high security perimeter products, complex bill of materials, project-based costing. In the discovery workshops, the operations director walked us through their entire production process. It was thorough. We mapped every step. 2 weeks, done. 3 months later, during user acceptance testing, someone in the estimating team said, "What about when we get a tender that requires a non-standard panel configuration?" Turns out there was an entire quoting process for bespoke products that happened maybe 15 times a year. It was not in any documented process. It lived in one person's head and a spreadsheet on their desktop. It was not complicated to build, but it required rework on 2 modules we thought were finished. This is what I call the "we forgot to mention" problem, and it happens on every single project. Not because anyone is being difficult, because people do not think to mention the things they do on autopilot. Your job in discovery is not just to ask what people do, it is to watch what they do, shadow them, sit at their desk and observe. The gap between what people describe and what they actually do is where the hidden complexity lives. If you're about to start an implementation, my advice is this: budget an extra week for discovery and spend that week doing observation, not workshops. You will thank me later. Weeks 3 through 6 are the build phase within the build phase. This is where your implementation partner is configuring the system, building custom workflows, setting up integrations, and turning all those workshop outputs into a working product. And this is where scope creep starts. Scope creep does not announce itself. It does not walk into the room and say, "I'm about to add 3 weeks to your project." It shows up as small, reasonable requests. Can we add one more field to the purchase order? Can the approval workflow have a third level for orders over 50,000? We just need a small report that shows stock by warehouse, by product category, by week. Each request takes a few hours. Each one seems trivial, but they accumulate. On an Odoo implementation I ran for a distribution company, we had 67 change requests in the first 6 weeks. 67. Not one of them was unreasonable. Not one of them would have been rejected if we had discussed it in discovery. But collectively, they added 4 weeks to the project timeline and required us to retest 3 modules we had already signed off. The problem is not that people ask for things. The problem is that most implementation projects do not have a clear mechanism for evaluating the cumulative impact of small changes. Each change is assessed in isolation. That will take 4 hours without anyone asking. What is the total impact of the 42 small changes we have approved this month? This is why at Q&A ERP Solutions, we run a weekly change control review. Every Friday, we look at all the change requests from that week, assess the cumulative impact on timeline and budget, and make a conscious decision: absorb, defer, or rescope. It sounds bureaucratic. It is the single most important process discipline on any implementation project. Without it, you wake up in week 8 and wonder how you are already 3 weeks behind schedule. If you are going through an implementation right now and you do not have a change control process, start one this Friday. Put every request on a list. Review them together. It will save your project. This is the phase that nobody enjoys: data migration and user acceptance testing. And I am going to be honest with you. This is where most of the stress happens. Data migration sounds straightforward. You take data from the old system and put it in the new system. In reality, it is an archaeology project. You are digging through years of accumulated data, duplicate customers, inactive product codes that are still linked to open transactions, addresses that were entered 3 different ways, currency fields with inconsistent decimal formatting, and my personal favorite, the general ledger that has been temporarily out of balance since 2019. On a SAP Business One migration I worked on early in my career, we discovered that the client had 14,000 product records, but only 6,000 were active. The other 8,000 were duplicates, legacy items, or test records that someone had created during the original implementation and never cleaned up. We could not simply ignore them because some had open stock transactions or linked purchase history. Cleaning that data took 3 weeks. 3 weeks that were not in the original project plan because nobody audits their data before an implementation. They just assume it is clean. Here is my rule. Your data is never clean. Never. Budget 2 weeks for data cleansing before you even start the migration. Assign someone from your team, and ideally someone who knows the data intimately, to work with your implementation partner on cleaning, deduplicating, and validating. This is not glamorous work. It is essential work. Then there is user acceptance testing. This is where your team sits down with the new system and tries to do their actual jobs. And this is where the emotional difficulty starts. People who have been doing their work a certain way for 5 or 10 years are suddenly confronted with a system that does things differently. The buttons are in different places. The workflow has more steps in some areas and fewer in others. The reports look different. I have seen experienced finance managers, people with 20 years of experience, sit down at a new system during UAT and say, "This does not work." What they mean is, "This does not work the way I am used to." And that is a completely valid feeling. But it is not a system defect. It is a change management challenge. And if you do not address it here, in testing, it will explode at go live. The best thing you can do during UAT is pair every tester with a support person, not to do the testing for them, but to sit next to them, answer questions in real time, and, critically, help them understand why the new process works the way it does. People accept change much more easily when they understand the reason behind it. The final stretch. Training week is when the theory becomes real. Your team is learning the system they will use every day, and the pressure is high because go live is days away. This is the scariest part of any implementation, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. Go live is the single most stressful day in a business system project. I have been through hundreds of them, and I still feel the weight of it every time, because no matter how well you have tested, no matter how thorough your training was, the first day on a live system with real transactions, real customers, and real money flowing through it is different. Things you tested successfully in a sandbox behave differently under real load. Users who were confident in training freeze when the data is real, and the undo button has consequences. On a Sage X3 Go Live for a construction supplies company, we had a user who had passed every test scenario perfectly, On go live morning, she could not process a sales order. Same screen, same steps, same product. The difference was that the customer on the order had a credit hold from an unpaid invoice that did not exist in the test environment, a completely normal business scenario that we had not included in her test script. She called me at 7:30 in the morning convinced the system was broken. It was not broken. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do. But in that moment, the fear and the pressure made a routine credit hold feel like a system failure. We walked her through it in 5 minutes. By lunchtime, she was processing orders faster than she ever had on the old system. This is why go live is not a single day. It is a 2-week period. The first week is intensive support. Your implementation partner should be on site or on call every day, handling exactly these kinds of situations. The second week is about stabilization, resolving the edge cases that only appear in production, adjusting configurations based on real usage, and building confidence in the team. And here is the critical message I want to leave you with today, because it ties directly back to what we talked about on day one. When you reach the end of week 13, when the first 100 days are done, you do not have a finished product. You have a foundation. The system works. The team is trained. The data is migrated. But the real value, the efficiency gains, the insights from real-time reporting, the competitive advantages of integrated operations, that has not happened yet. It is about to happen. It happens in the beyond. Do not judge your entire investment by the chaos of the build phase. The first 100 days are supposed to be hard. That is what building looks like. What matters is what you do next. That is day 2 of 100 days and beyond. Here is the one thing I want you to remember. The first 100 days of any implementation are harder than anyone tells you. Discovery uncovers hidden complexity. Scope creep is relentless. Data migration is an archaeology project. Go live is terrifying. All of that is normal. It does not mean your project is failing. It means you are building a foundation. Tomorrow on day 3, we are crossing into the beyond. I'm going to talk about what happens on day 101, where the real return on investment begins, what changes, what to focus on, and why most companies leave money on the table because they stop investing at exactly the wrong moment. If this was useful, subscribe wherever you are listening, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.